Ladies and gentlemen and vector designers, we're going to do the freestyle challenge in Illustrator. All right, so we're going to go through this, and this is just, we're going to skip through a bunch of stuff because what I'm trying to get done here is just have you to take the notes. All right, why do we take so many notes? If you click on a link like this, it's going to tell you, there's studies have shown that if you type stuff out, you don't really remember as much. But if you take notes by hand, you remember better. That's the first step. There's other things you can do too. But at any rate, we take notes because it's just one way to help you remember stuff better. Okay. So again, I'm just going to be zooming through this because I'm just trying to do the note part. All right. Put the topic, Illustrator Freestyle Challenge, at the top. Put your name at the top of your paper notes. The date at the top of your notes, and put your name on the handout. So there's some handouts that go with it. So you're going to take notes on some lined paper, and then some of the notes you're going to take on a handout that I have for you, and then you're going to staple those together and turn those in together. So we're going to do some stuff on notes and handouts. I'll tell you when. All right, so on your lined paper notes, I want you to look up on the web the answers for who uses Illustrator, this, and this. So look those up on the internet and answer those questions. And so you don't have, whenever you see stuff in red, you don't have to write down the question. You just write down the answer. So you wouldn't say who uses Illustrator and then answer it. You'd say blah 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 use Illustrator. So you answer it in a way that I understand what the question is. So you would say I can get a job as a blah 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 if I know how to use Illustrator. So what kind of things can you do with Adobe Illustrator? Answer those questions. All right. Okay, so write something to this down. Illustrator is a professional grade vector-based Illustrator application that does not use pixels, but instead uses math formulas to create lines and shapes. It does not lose quality or pixelate. So I want to show you Photoshop. I'm showing you something different. Okay, so in Photoshop, let's see what happens if you zoom in. Let's zoom in, zoom in, zoom in, zoom in, zoom in. Eventually I see what? I see the little squares. What are those called? They're pixels, right? And so an image has a particular quality and it looks good up to some point, and then it starts to pixelate and it looks bad, right? And so that is not what Adobe Illustrator is. If I go to Adobe Illustrator and I zoom in, okay, I zoom in, zoom in, zoom in. Okay, it never pixelates because these shapes are made up of mathematical formulas, and it just scales the formula, scales the formula. So you could make this thing as big or as small as you want, but it's never gonna pixelate. Okay, so it is vector based. It means it does all the artwork with mathematical formulas, so it does not pixelate or lose quality. Okay, so I want you to write this down. Are there free vector-based software? Yes, there are. So Inkscape is free. You can't use it on a Chromebook, but you can download it on a PC or Mac. It's pretty good. And the reason I'm showing you this because Illustrator is expensive, Creative Cloud is expensive. So if you want to do some artwork at home, you can get Illustrator, or if you want a free version, you can use Inkscape. If you want to do something on a Chromebook or on a browser-based, there's one called Boxy or Figma or SVG Edit. And you can just do a search for browser-based free vector drawing programs, and a lot of these will come up. And every year there's different ones. Some go away and some are new. All right, so write that down. Okay, what is a layer? A layer is like drawing. Like, so this guy right here, he's drawing on a clear sheet of plastic, right? And so he could add another sheet of plastic on top and draw on that, and he could remove one, he could add one back, right? So that's what a layer is like. And you guys are already kind of familiar with the layers at this point. But so for example, I could go to my layers in Illustrator and it's like, oh, I don't want this apple layer, but I do want this layer and this layer and this layer. Okay, so that's like drawing on a clear sheet of plastic, and it's nice because you can separate different parts of your artwork, and it's so you can just focus on one thing without the distraction of the whole thing. Okay, so write this down. A layer is like, write that down. Hit pause on the video and write that down. Okay, so the pencil tool is easier for scribbling lines. Okay, so we probably know this by now, but if you go to Illustrator and you go to the pencil tool layer, oops, I locked it, I didn't turn it on. So, and you can go to the pencil tool and you can do these free form scribble lines. It's not super amazing, but it's easy. It can be amazing. It could be just what you need. Okay. Okay, so, oh shoot. Um, so whenever you see the blue color at the top, that means you're going to take this note on the handout. So should be a handout, and you should see a thing that looks like this. And um, so this is an open path. It starts and ends at different anchor points, right? All right, so I want you to put like a little X right here on your notes and an X right there saying, oh, look, it starts at one point and ends at the other, okay? So this is a closed path. It starts and ends at the same anchor point. So put like a little X right there saying, oh, look, it starts there and ends there. So it's closed. So like if you were to try to fill this with water, the water wouldn't get out. On this one, if you were to try to fill with this with water, the water would spill all out, right? It opens and closes at the same time. All right. Write this down. Color and path. Stroke is the outside. Write this down in your notes. So sometimes if it's a question, you don't write down the question. But if it's just a statement that I want you to know, write this thing down. And you can write it down exactly as is, or you can write it in your own words as short as possible. But let me show you what this means. What it's talking about a stroke is the outside color. All right, so if I'm going to draw, let me draw something with the pen tool. So I'm going to draw a beautiful star. That is not a beautiful star. Well, we'll pretend. This this star is not bold nor beautiful, but it's just faking it. It's pretending to be bold and beautiful. All right, so we're going to go to the properties, and we have the fill color. The fill color is the inside color, so I can fill it with whatever color I want. The stroke is the outside color, so I can also change that to whatever I want. And then I can also change the thickness of the stroke. And if I click on this thing, I can also, oh no, if I click right here, I can also change all sorts of things about it. So instead of being round here, I can make it a square cap or a projecting cap. Okay, I can change the corners to a bevel. I don't know if you can see that, but it changes it. I can change it to a dashed line. So I can make it dash. Anyway, I can make arrowhead. I can do all kinds of different things. All right. So anyway, but you can change the fill and the stroke. Let's go back to the spiel and see what's next. Okay, we got it. Okay, so the pen tool is really precise. So unlike the pencil tool, which is good for scribbles, the pen tool is really precise. So if I go to my pen tool layer, I can draw very precise. I'm on the wrong layer. So if I go here, I can draw very precise straight lines. Okay, and that's super annoying that it's dashed, so I'm going to change it to not dashed. Okay, so I can draw. Eventually, I'll show you how to also do very accurate curves with the pen tool, but we're not going to do that quite yet. But write this down. Drawing with the pen tool. The pen tool is better for drawing very precisely. Okay, the direct selection tool allows you to select and edit individual points in an object. Okay, so let's take a look. Write this down, and then I'm going to show you what I'm talking about. All right, so I can go, so let's say let me draw a curve. Actually, I'm going to draw a curve with the pen tool. So I'll show you how to do this later, but you click and drag and click and drag and click and drag. I'm going to do like a janky heart. Okay, so it's a janky heart. Let's say that like, oh man, that's terrible. I'm going to fix it. So what I can do is I can go to not the selection tool, but the direct selection tool, and I can grab anchor points and I can move them. Okay, and I can grab these what are called handles and I can move them. So I can use the direct selection tool to edit every little bit of my artwork. Okay, so something like that. So it goes from a janky heart to a beautiful, very beautiful heart, like that. Sorry, this is super bad still. All right, there we go. Something like that. Same thing on like a basic shapes. You can drag your basic shapes. Okay. Other things you can do with that tool is let's draw a rectangle. So you can draw a rectangle, and you can use your direct selection tool. You can move that, but you can also do this. You can round the edges with it. Anyway, so it does a number of things. All right, let's keep going. So that's the direction selection tool. Write this down in your notes. Make a new layer. Okay, we just did it. Okay, so we're jumping back to we're still on the pen tool. Um, okay, so this is in your handouts, drawing a Bezier. That's not Bezier. It's French or Belgium, so it's a Bezier curve. So it's very fancy, like everything Belgium and French. Okay, so what I want you to do is I want you to write this down on the handout. So get not on your line paper, but on the handout. Write this down, a Bezier curve. So write it right on the page that looks like this. Write this down. Okay. Okay, so whenever using the pen tool and making a Bezier curve, how far you drag the handle determines how strong the curve is. So let's say I threw a rock. Okay, if I threw a rock, well, let's look at it. I better show you first, and then I'll give my description here. Let's go to layers, and we're going to turn this off. We'll create a new layer that we can work on. All right, so if I'm using the pen tool, right, if I click and drag a little bit, I have a mellow curve, okay? But if I click and drag a lot, I have a steep curve, right? So it's like throwing a rock. So this is like, so that handle is like how far I throw the rock. So if I throw the rock a little bit, it's going to go, right? But if I throw a rock a lot, it's going to go, right? So it's going to just pretend like that is how much you throw the rock. And then you can go back with the direct selection tool and you can adjust like, oh, I want to throw the rock harder. Oh, it's going to make a bigger arch, or I want to throw the rock less. Okay. But again, you have handles on a Bezier curve. You have handles that you can control. And then you have, no, I'm sorry. That's an anchor point. You have the anchor point that you can move around. And then you have the handles that you can move around. Okay. And so it's a challenging to get used to this tool, but that's what we're going to be practicing in the next couple of days. All right. So, how far you drag the handle is how it works. Okay, so make sure, so that's the handle. This is the direction line, and this is wait, no, I'm sorry, I keep mixing up. That's the anchor point, that's the direction line, and that's the handle. So a Bezier curve typically has those. Okay, write this down on the handout. We got the sissy blue color. That means it's for the handout. You can click, drag, alt drag, release to create a corner anchor point. Write that down, and then I'm going to show you what I'm talking about. Okay, so if I want to make a teardrop, right? So it's like, oh, okay, so here's the teardrop. It's round at the bottom, and then it's going to be curved here, and then it's going to be a point here, and then it's going to be, oh wait, it's not doing a point. All right, so it automatically wants to do a curve. Well, what do I do? Okay, well, I have to tell it I want to do an anchor point. So I click, drag, and then up here I click, drag. Now this is the thing, when I hit Alt, it tells it, oh, you don't want a smooth curve, you want a corner anchor point. So click, drag, click, drag, click, drag. Okay, so if you look at this, it's saying you can click, drag, and then use the Alt key to create a corner anchor point. Write that down in your notes. Okay, here's the quiz. Here's the Illustrator Part 1 quiz. I want you to answer all these questions 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 on your line paper notes. And then what I want you to do is staple your handout to your line notes. Make sure your name's on everything. Make sure it's all filled in, and turn that into the basket. Thank you.